Welcome to Soul Care, a chance to find a moment of peace and serenity in an otherwise turbulent time. The word serenity may take you to a distant place like a green meadow with a waterfall in the distance glistening in the sun, or perhaps a sky with the sun setting and colors of red and gold shooting out at the end of the day. We often find serenity in nature, and that brings a sense of calm and peace into our lives. But I also see serenity as something to call upon, as an important concept to be able to touch and bring into our lives at times when we otherwise may be stressed, at times when we need to feel that sense of peace and serenity. When there's a war raging, when life as we know it stops, that's when we need serenity. And that's what Reinhold Niebuhr thought, who used the prayer called the Serenity Prayer. He wrote it in one form in about 1940 during World War II. Now, Reinhold Niebuhr was a theologian. He was of German-American descent, and he taught at Union Theological Seminary in New York City and spent his summers in Massachusetts. And it was in a summer that he wrote the Serenity Prayer. His wife says that his preferred wording of the prayer goes like this: God, give us grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. You've probably heard this maybe in a little different form. Right now we face many things that cannot be changed. The coronavirus means that we cannot change the present limitations that are put upon us. We cannot socialize, we cannot work, many of us. Many of us cannot go to school. We cannot do the things we're used to doing. How can we accept this new reality and not fight it? How can we accept this change with serenity? I think it's about letting go of the idea that we have control over everything. For in fact, there are many things in life we have no control over. People who have a serious health crisis know this. They know they simply have no control over the situation they're now in. Some years ago, I broke my arm. It was a Saturday night, and I fell in a stupid way. And after I got up off of the floor, I realized surely I had a break. So my husband helped me make a sling, and I made it to bed and slept somewhat that night. Wanted to go ahead with the next day, and I was to preach a sermon in church, and I wasn't about to let that sermon go, so I went with my sling under my robe, and I conducted the worship service. And then after worship, I was scheduled to officiate at a very small informal memorial service in a couple's apartment where both people had been invalids, really, and the wife had died. So the service was right in the living room of their apartment. And so I went, and with my arm in a sling, I conducted that service, and we prayed together, and I made it home, and then asked my husband to take me to the emergency room. And I did go, and they took an x-ray, and sure enough, my arm was broken. So they prepared a bigger sling for me, and then I went home with that sling. And I realized, little by little, that life had changed for me. I had no control. I had to make accommodations. So I couldn't do anything by myself. I couldn't dress. I couldn't blow dry my hair. I couldn't cook. I couldn't even open a jar without the use of one of my arms. So I took a day off and rested, and then I recommenced ministry, but in a very slow fashion, slow motion ministry, I called it at the time. I slept with pillows propping me up. I napped in the afternoon. I typed my sermons with one hand. I didn't drive. I did what I don't like to do. I asked for help. It was a lesson to receive the help of others. We face two crises right now in our nation: the coronavirus pandemic and also the growing awareness in our country of what a terrible problem we have in racism. These are our two crises. The pandemic we cannot change. We must simply make the best of it. Of course, we can go by the rules, we can wear masks, and we can stay safe. But otherwise, we must ask for grace to accept this horrible reality, for we cannot change it. That means I need to ask for grace to accept that I will not be able to be with my friends, I will not be able to travel, I will not be able to hug my own children who are grown, live away, but come home and see us once in a while. Some things really get on my nerves. Some days I'm bored. Sometimes I feel caged. I don't feel free and independent. So I have to say, God, give me the grace to accept with serenity these things. It helps me to think of what I do have: my home and my health, my marriage, shelter, food, family, friends, my church. Surely my cup is really nearly full. And it helps me also to think of other people who are not as fortunate as I am. Those without these things that I take for granted, and those who are working as our first responders, and those who are themselves fighting to live through the virus, and those who have lost family, loved ones, who have succumbed to the virus and are now mourning. I am so fortunate by comparison. Truly, my cup is nearly full. The other crisis that weighs on our hearts as Americans this day is racism. It has come to our attention since the death of George Floyd. And I know I'm thinking about it every day. I'm talking to people online and participating in groups, and I'm reading to educate myself. Surely racism is something that should be changed. This is the second part of the prayer. Give us the courage to change the things that should be changed. Working toward anti-racism is going to take a lot of courage. It's going to take a major shift in our thinking to recognize the implicit racism that exists in white America. This is going to take confession and humility. Anti-racism work will be hard work, slow work, work that must not be avoided. It will take courage. Alcoholics Anonymous has adopted the Serenity Prayer as its own. And in AA, people say it this way: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And the prayer goes on in an extended ending. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. The reliance on a higher power is so significant in this prayer. This prayer requires assistance of God. And when we admit that we need help, it is a tremendous help. It's hard to accept the things that we cannot change. And it's hard to change the things we can. And it is hard to have the wisdom to know the difference. So I give you this prayer today. Try it out. When things feel hard to accept and hard to change and hard to distinguish which things can be changed. I hope you will find serenity in acceptance and courage in motivation to change. And I hope you'll find wisdom to know the difference. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.